Welcome to the Clothes Free Living Update, brought to you by the folks at ClothesFreeLife.com. We're excited to be able to bring you this regular feature of the clothes-free news from around the web, information related to clothes-free living, and much more. Now here's your host, Earl D.
Happy Clothes Free Friday, and welcome to episode 19 of the Clothes Free Living Update. I'm your host, Earl D, and I hope you're able to enjoy your day today, or at least your weekend some point of it, clothes free, and that you're tuning in today to our pre-recorded episode today. So we won't have any live chat going on, but welcome to our pre-recorded episode, and that you'll be downloading this and taking it with you on the rest of your Friday or over the weekend. Just want to remind you that you can download our episodes of our recorded broadcasts on iTunes, on the Spreaker page. So you can go to iTunes and search iTunes for Clothes Free Living Update. You can also download them on our Spreaker page, Spreaker.com, /Clothes Free Life. You can find us on Google Play as well as on the Stitcher app, and there are links to all of these on our website, ClothesFreeLife.com. So on today's show, we're going to kind of go back to our regular format. We'll talk about the news that's in mainstream media about naturism, nudism, and clothes-free living in a moment. We'll look at some of the bear buzz around the web and on the internet around the same naturism, nudism, and clothes-free living. Then we'll have a little bit of a time to chat about something that we think is an important issue to explore when it comes to how we are perceived publicly in terms of the naturist, nudist, and clothes-free life. And then we're going to have part 2 today of that wonderful interview with Gingerbread Chelsea, who is a bare-chested advocate who is doing a lot, in our opinion, of great work to help to normalize and bare-chested equality and that's her language, for women. And she does it, we're excited because she does it in a way that is really positive, stays within the law, and focuses on something that we think is important, that it's about equality, not just about getting your top off. And so we'll have that interview, part 2 of that interview on Skype, that was done with our contributing editor and women's issues editor, Hantony Hart. And that's, I think, a great interview that's worth sticking around and listening to. So let's take a moment and explore the Barely There news.
Find body positive, clothes-free friendly postcards at www.twoscoops.cards.
So just a couple of things came across our news feed this week. One of them was an issue related to Irish naturists who were threatened with arrest based on their efforts to use a portion of a beach in Ireland as a clothing optional beach. And the mayor of that town, after it was made known that this Irish naturists from the Irish Naturist Association were on the beach, decided to issue a threat that if they did that again, that they would be subject to arrest because public nudity is illegal in Ireland. Well, now comes the news that the legislature in Ireland is exploring the possibility of passing new laws that allow for public nudity in some cases where there's no sexual activity or offense or intent to offend in place. And that'll be interesting because that would actually give these folks the opportunity to be on a beach clothes free and not be subject to arrest as this particular official in a town suggested. And so we'll keep you up to date on that. We know that this can be a very fickle thing. Just because they're suggesting that they are exploring it doesn't mean it will actually happen. We had that happen in Canada before, where the one part of the legislature or the council of the local municipality agreed to it, and the other part of it, when the whole municipality's officials got together, they denied that use. So we'll see what the Irish legislature decides, if they will choose to or opt to allow for some public nudity, if it's not for offense, that would allow for naturists to be able to be on beaches in Ireland clothes free. Another thing that came across our newsfeed this week was that apparently clothes-free yoga is something that's trending now in New Zealand. Now, we know that in the U.S. there are a few pockets of areas where you can go to and take a clothes-free yoga class. In New York City, some in San Francisco, a few oriented towards men in Texas, specifically around Austin, I believe, and maybe even Dallas. There are a few in Canada, around Vancouver. But recently, a lot of the action around clothes-free yoga has been happening down under in Australia, where Rosie Rees has been doing a lot of clothes-free yoga classes specifically for women. There's a few couples yoga classes as well in Australia, and she's gearing up to go on her tour again, doing workshops around that as it's moving into the fall and winter in Australia. But there's a recent news feed that there's certain upscale suburbs in Auckland, New Zealand, are becoming home to clothes-free yoga classes. And you knew there was going to be some blowback, right? There are other folks who are suggesting that not in my backyard, in other areas of New Zealand, they're not wanting it. One of the interesting things is that one of the folks that was interviewed suggesting that it would not fly in their area said that nude yoga is not classical yoga, or clothes-free yoga is not classical yoga. And I was struck by that, because based on what I know about yoga, if you even went to India today, a lot of the yoga that's practiced there is not practiced with a whole lot of clothing, and there is a stream of yoga that's highly religious, highly spiritual, that where the practitioners, at least the men, are clothes-free. They are clothes-free in all of their activities, their spiritual activities, and yoga is a part of that. So it seems to me like this is another instance of Western sensibilities being projected onto something that is naturally practiced with minimal or no clothing in its original state. And then we've taken it and we want to say that in a classical sense, when what they're really saying is in a Western sense, this is not yoga, when in fact that's just not true. So, but anyway, the folks in New Zealand seem to be taking hold of clothes-free yoga. A couple of other things in the news. Spencer Tunick, artist who was made famous by the HBO documentary Nude States, where he went every state in the U.S. and photographed an individual clothes-free nude, and has since that done art installations, naked art installations, nude art installations all over the world. Is planning 2 new installations of his work, of his photography. One is coming up in Hull in England, and he's been posting things about that on his Instagram site, just getting people thinking about what kind of color scheme he's going to be using and so forth. And the other thing that he's planning is at the Republican convention, in order to promote top equality, he is planning an installation with 100 women facing, I guess, away from the site or facing towards the site to highlight some of the inequalities and the ways that that particular party, I guess, is treating women. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and really connect well with our conversation with our guest later on in our show, Gingerbread Chelsea, who he is a topless, bare-chested advocate working to normalize and create equality for women when it comes to bare-chestedness and top freedom in public. So this is a very interesting thing that's developing there. You can check out Spencer Tunick and all the work that he's planning to do. We'll have links to it on the show notes for this podcast on our website, closefreelife.com. You can go to closefreelife.com and search podcasts in that section of our category on our website, and you'll find in the show notes all the links to these various issues and topics in the news. So that's what's been highlighting that we've seen on our news feed, and we'll take a moment for a little promotional break. So let's talk about the bear buzz that's happening on the internet related to naturism, clothes-free, and clothes-free living. There are a couple of things that I wanted to highlight for you today. One was the report by a blogger that a member of a body freedom group has been banned from the group because he allegedly sexually harassed women in that group. And this is a group that's headed by a well-known, I don't know if I would say famous, but well-known advocate for complete body freedom in San Francisco, someone named Gypsy Taub, and she has, I guess she tweeted out, it was reported by this blogger, that this individual, and I'm not going to name the individual just because there's no, I don't have any independent sourcing on whether this harassment took place or not, but that he was removed from this organization, which tends to promote a very quote-unquote sex-positive approach to body freedom. And this individual allegedly was harassing women who are a part of this group and has been removed from the group, and she will no longer, Gypsy Taub will no longer do any activities or events with the person who had been a big part of the group's events and activities in the past. Now, the interesting thing about this was the reaction to the post by this blogger whose headline was that this incident was proof that men, again, were the problem in naturism and nudism and clothes-free living. That men keep creating a an unsafe space for women. And it's a very interesting thought, which we just reported the way it was, except for just adding the word allegedly. We reported that headline on our website. And the response from one individual was very interesting, that it's not men in general, but men who abuse. Now, the problem is that, women see this stuff, I think, and they're relating it to their experience. And I think the challenge is that, again, what we talked about last week is that oftentimes men, I think, see nudity and the nude form through a different lens than women, and oftentimes struggle to do that in a way that is not sexual or doesn't lead to something sexual. And I think that's a real challenge that we have to think about and get a hold of if we're going to create safe space for women. And in light of that, we have coming up in just about a weekend or two, British Naturism and the American Association of Nude Recreation are co-sponsoring a Women in Naturism weekend, June 4th and 5th, and to invite and encourage participation of more women in the practice of nudism, or the being involved in naturism and clothes-free living. And if we don't address the question of how do we create safe spaces then for people who are different, then we're never going to be able to diversify or broaden the demographic of the people who are participating in clothes-free living. And some of the things that have come across on the web, that we've come across on the web, suggest that we have to really look at this issue closely. For instance, we came across a report about a man who was arrested and has been charged. He was arrested at a nudist park for distribution of child pornography. There are a lot of people we can run across so in social media who are tweeting and sharing images of children in naturist situations. And they do that, rightly so, with the intent of trying to promote family naturism. And that's all good and well. But we choose not to do that. We don't even like those when we come across them on social media, in terms of favoriting them, because we just think there are other ways to promote this without going down that road and creating a problem, maybe where people are pursuing that for means or intentions other than just promoting family naturism. And then we come across the fact that's trending today or on Twitter is Send a Nude Day, National Send a Nude Day. And, again, it's all focused on this idea of just getting naked, which is something we think is, and showing your naked body. We think that's just, that's not all that Clothes-Free Life is about. Clothes-Free Life is about life. That's why our mission is bringing life to naturist ideals and nudist practice. It's about life, not just getting naked. It's about how your life revolves around your being clothes-free, or how being clothes-free is a part of your life. What do you do, and so forth. And that's a real challenge when all we do is focus on images of naked people. That's why we're promoting our campaign at closefreelife.com of More Than Pics, encouraging people to tweet and write about experiences of life clothes-free, and not just blog or tweet pictures of naked people. And it was really interesting. A a tweeter that we follow, and who follows us this week, announced that they would no longer be tweeting images because those images were being utilized, drawn on, and attracting people who were primarily just looking for porn and naked bodies. And I think that's the challenge when we separate the life part of Clothes Free from the clothes free life. And it's all about just being clothes free or naked or nude and looking at people that way. That leads me very much into the thing I want to talk about today. It's our talk-up topic of the week, or the question that we asked in our talk-up topic of the week this week has been this simple question. Is naturism or nudism an excuse for exhibitionism? So we're going to talk about that in a moment after this thought. So our talk-up topic of the week is naturism or nudism used by some people, I don't believe for a minute by everybody, as an excuse for exhibitionism. There are a few people that I've been in contact with online, I've never met face-to-face, who've often said, there's a little bit of exhibitionist in all of us, and that's part of naturism or nudism. And I've really questioned that. I've wondered about that. I've not bought into that idea. But recently, several people, I would say a couple of people, 2 or 3 people who have previously followed on Instagram and on Twitter, started talking about defining themselves or labeling themselves as people who like to show off, quote unquote, their bodies to others. Basically, and to me, that's just not a way. That's a way to say, I'm an exhibitionist. I like to show my body, and the reason that really stuck with me is that for World Naked Gardening Day, a UK newspaper wrote an article talking about the day that led with the idea that a headline that said that exhibitionists are taking their clothes off for World Naked Gardening Day. And to me, that completely sullied and stained and tarnished the kind of pure natural experience that was being called for on World Naked Gardening Day, which was to get out in nature, encourage people to get some sun, some clothes-free sun time, and then to connect with nature by, maybe planting flowers or cleaning up or something like that. And instead, it was, exhibitionists get their kid off for World Naked Gardening Day. And it just had such a perverse tone to it. And part of the reason was the person that was highlighted most in the article was someone who was a sex worker. And that's who they took the pictures of to highlight this particular article. And it just really struck me that is just not what World Naked Gardening Day is about. And then shortly after that, almost as if that was a cue, there came the folks who we had previously followed, who were saying, "Hey, I'm an exhibitionist. I love to show off. This is my and this is why I have this account." And in our Talk Up topic, one of the responses to our Talk Up topic question about whether or not naturism was being used as an excuse for exhibitionism, someone said, well, exhibitionism isn't naturally or necessarily sexual, which was news to me. I admit, the only thing I've ever thought about when I think about someone who's an exhibitionist, is someone who is trying to show their body to others for some kind of sexual kind of gratification. And so I spent some time doing some research, looking for other descriptions of it. And, while there might be an attempt or some connection between like streaking or something like that to exhibitionism, by and large, the different definitions and descriptions of exhibitionism that I came across were all about some kind of sexual activity and or sexual titillation or sexual gratification. And one of the things that was really sad about it was the sense that there is a stream or a group of exhibitionists who really are intent upon taking their exhibitionism to the next level and abusing or using other people, and they talked about that with children and so forth. And so this is the kind of stuff that I think we've got to be really conscious of when, especially online, we just willy-nilly post pictures or images of kids or suggest that there's nothing sexual at all about wanting to show your body to someone else. Where I sit and the people that I connect with in the close free community aren't trying to show anybody their bodies. They don't get close free so that they can show off their bodies. In fact, a lot of times people don't want to show off their bodies because they don't feel good about their bodies, so that's not even an issue. But I think it's really important that we make this distinction between people who get undressed because they want to show their bodies to someone else for some kind of reason that either gives them pleasure or they hope will give the other person pleasure, titillate them in a situation where it's just simple nudity, and someone who is not getting undressed to show their body to somebody else, but because it's a part of who they are and how they live, and it's comfortable, it's makes them more comfortable in terms of their everyday life. And that's, I think, it might be a subtle thing, but I think it's an important thing to explore and to not just have every aspect of close free living be taken over by some kind of hidden or kind of camouflaged sexual intent. And I think the reason why that becomes important is as we move towards listening to our second part of our interview with our guest, Chelsea Gingerbread, who is a bare-chested advocate who's working to normalize and equalize the opportunities for women in the way that men can walk around without tops. I think some of the things that I see, she's gotten a lot of press, a lot of write-ups recently, and a lot of how people respond is by suggesting that her intent by taking her top off is something other than being able to walk around equally in the same way that a man can walk around without a top. They tend to suggest that what she's trying to do is she has some sexual intent behind it, that she's looking for attention, or she must be an exhibitionist. And when we don't address that in terms of the close free community, we can't really effectively, I think, support efforts like hers. So we're going to listen in a second here to the second part of our interview that was done on Skype with our contributing editor, Anthony Hart, with Gingerbread, who is a advocate for bare-chested equality in Maryland and in areas where it is legal to do so.
Planning your next clothes-free European vacation? Consider Vritomartis Naturist Resort in Crete. The best nudist resort to enjoy your naturist holidays. Visit www.vritomartis.com.
I'll have like 2 more questions just to wrap it up, and we'll trap the interview, and we might talk more after that, people. But what if people are like, so how do I get involved? How do people get involved in the movement?
Well,
what does getting involved mean?
It's not like you get a packet in the mail and it says, "Well, welcome to the
packet in the mail." No.
We should make packets. No, we have little badges. Yeah, we should send out little stuffed animals. Really, and it doesn't matter what gender, because we need everybody. We need everyone's support, because that's the only way we move forward on any topic. So, we need men, we need all identities, we need everyone. So no matter how you identify, if you, start talking to your friends about it, really what needs to happen is a conversation. Conversation needs to happen. We need to have a conversation as a whole society about this, and about how we view women and how we view all gender identities and how we can make that equal. How we can make laws equal, all of those sorts of things. So really it starts with conversation. So your mom, your dad, your brother, your best friend, whatever, it doesn't matter. Have a conversation, talk to people. I talk to people all the time. I talk to people, just randomly on the street about it. But, so really that's kind of like the first place to start. If you are a female who wants to go bare-chested, I would definitely suggest looking up your local laws. So first you want to look at what the actual legal language says. So that's in the actual laws, and what your state constitution says. Because we have our federal constitution, and then each state has their own constitution. The state constitutions are often much, much, much more detailed. Because, the federal constitution is like, well, we can say this much, but we'll leave the rest up to the states. And so the states have this, much wider, much more encompassing language about most things. And most states have very clear legal language about equality. Certain states are much stronger than others. I think there's 5 states that have the strongest language about gender equality, and equality in general. And it's Maryland, Pennsylvania. There's 3 others that I can't think of right now, of course, but there's 5. And they have the absolute prohibition on either making or enforcing a law unequally, basically. So you cannot make a law that treats genders differently. You cannot enforce a law that treats genders differently. And then there's different steps down below that. So absolute prohibition is Maryland and Pennsylvania in particular. And then there's strict prohibition and prohibition, and so there's different levels. So you need to find out what level your state has. So you need to find out. So that's in your constitution, your state constitution. You need to find out what laws state. So a lot of indecency laws, because that's kind of the catch-all for the topless woman, your indecent exposure. So a lot of that language is very vague, and it doesn't usually delineate between male and female, or if it does, it only talks about men and them not showing their members, because a lot of it is very archaic language. Like Maryland's got turned back to common law, which is from Britain. So all it says is that basically men can't show their members. It doesn't say anything about women. And we also have the strict as, absolute prohibition against, inequality. So yeah, you have to actually look at what the real legal language says. And then, a lot of times street police officers use what's called a commissioner's manual, which is it helps them charge for things. So they'll look up,
Okay.
the charge is this, but it doesn't give the actual legal definition of what that charge is.
Okay.
So they might have it. The commissioner's manual is not perfect, and it's constantly updated, or it should be. So the commissioner's manual is not law. That's the thing. That's the trouble that people run into a lot of times. They think the commissioner's manual is what the actual definition is. Even police officers sometimes think that, but it's not. It doesn't mean that you won't get a ticket sometimes, but it means that you can challenge it later. So really, it's just be prepared. Look at case law. You have to look at case law because that sets the precedent of the charging afterwards. So, if someone else has done it beforehand and they got charged with this, then that stands up later, when you come along. They're going to refer back to that case. That sets the precedent. So, so those are really the three main things, is to look at what the state constitution says, look at what the actual legal language for the definition of indecent exposure is, the full-on legal language, and then look at case law. Those are the main things for women to be aware of when they are going bare-chested. And then what I have found makes kind of the easiest path is to contact the police beforehand, wherever I am. This is what I'm reading. This is how I have interpreted what is here. Can you verify this for me, please? And sometimes they're like, okay, well, let me look. And then, they'll put me on hold for 15 or 20 minutes, or leave me waiting in the lobby for 15 or 20 minutes. And then they're like, well, we can't find any, definition that says that, this is illegal. So yeah, go ahead. And that's happened to me a few times. And then there's cases where it's taken months to get a resolution to this question. So it depends. It all depends on the police department and what's going on, certainly. So really it's to, be prepared, be persistent, and be calm and collected, because it doesn't do anyone any good to get elevated. You want to be less. Even if someone's coming at you with anger, or like I had my first DC trip, the cops telling me, it's unreasonable. I must have heard that 30 times. 30 times. Did it make me enraged? Absolutely. Did I project enraged? No, absolutely not. Because it wouldn't have done any good. Because one, then the association in that other person's mind, be it a cop, be it another person, is that this is the type of person who does this. They're angry, they're yelling, they're defensive. That's setting up a negative stereotype for a bare-chested person. Or even a supporter. If a supporter does that too, it doesn't do any good.
True.
Fighting fire with fire just makes everyone burnt. You can't do that. You have to de-escalate, and you have to think back to reason and logic, and you have to go, here it is. I'm going to hand it to you. I want you to look at it. If you discard it, that's fine, but at least you looked at it.
Right.
And so it's just a matter of being persistent and not being a threat, but not being threatened either. So yeah, it just takes sometimes some persistence and in getting it resolved, really. And in the grand scheme of things, a couple months isn't that big of a deal. That's what happened in Pittsburgh. I went there in November. Someone contacted me through the blog and said that she had read some of the articles and said, I'm looking at our legal language and we have the same absolute prohibition, and I don't see it defined anywhere that being a female being bare-chested is illegal. But then she tried to go for a bike ride and got stopped and not harassed, but they weren't particularly nice, but they weren't mean either. They were just like, you can't do that. You have to put a shirt on, blah, blah, blah. And, which is a knee-jerk reaction, which some people have. And then, I started talking, we started talking to, the police department there, and it took them a while to get with their legal department and for the legal department to come back and say, yes, okay, yeah, that's correctly, it's not illegal. But their police department was very, very respectful the entire time, had us come in for an in-person interview. We talked about it, they took down all the information, email communication, and they said, it's probably going to take a while, but we're going to handle it. We're going to get back to you. So there was never they weren't putting us off or anything like that. And they gave us realistic expectations about how long it was going to take, and it proved true, but it's resolved now. And hey, Pittsburgh.
Yay.
Yeah, I love Pittsburgh. It's so much, there's a lot of stuff there, and I never thought about that really. And we had a great time, and we had no issues, and it was fine. So it really helps to do your homework before you contact the police. Then contact the police, be, professional. Realize that what you are doing, is representative of all of us in this movement, and that that you don't want to do any harm to the movement. So you have to keep it together, no matter what somebody says. And really, I haven't had any issues, but it's always a possibility until this resolves in a national level. It's always a possibility. So, to be prepared mentally and emotionally for anything that could happen. If someone says, "Oh, you're ugly, you need to put a shirt on." Okay, but I'm not going to. Right. Like, you're entitled to your opinion, but your opinion of me does not affect what I think of myself. So you have to be secure in yourself at that point too. And I know many people of varying body types and nationalities and ethnicities that do it too, and they haven't really had any issues. Not to say that it might not happen, but I think people are more likely to be vitriolic online because you get to be a keyboard warrior, and you don't have to be accountable for what you say. Yeah. And people aren't humans at that point; they're just somebody else online, and it takes that human aspect out of it. But in real life, I've had only maybe like two like somewhat negative interactions. One of them wasn't even interaction. It was just some like weird, crazy person off in the distance. Right. But other than that, people either are going to be positive and supportive, or they're going to be totally neutral and not care. And that's the thing that people don't realize, is that the vast majority of people aren't going to care. They're not, half of them won't even see you. So it's not this huge spectacle that people think it is, unless you make it that. If you're going around, yelling at a bullhorn or have things painted on your chest, or, things like, and if you're antagonizing people, yeah, that's going to be a spectacle, and you're going to draw a crowd. Yep. But if you're just acting like a normal person, if you're just being yourself, most people aren't going to bother you.
Well, that's excellent guidance for folks. Thank you so much, Gingerbread. And like I mentioned at the beginning of all this, we'll have all of Gingerbread's links posted to the website, the notes for the Friday Clothes Free Living podcast update and all this. Follow Gingerbread, and then again, all the pointers that she gave and the guidance, really take that to heart if you're looking to get involved, whether it's for your own top freedom or for supporting others in top freedom. Really take to heart a lot of the guidance that she shared, and as well as the story behind it. It's so rich to have that human story behind anything that we're doing. So thank you so much, Gingerbread.
Thanks for listening to the Clothes Free Living Update with Earl D. If you enjoyed this podcast, we hope you'll tell your friends. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website, clothesfreelife.com, for previous broadcasts. This has been a Clothes Free Life production. Join us next time for another edition of the Clothes Free Living Update.